So we were gone for more than 6 weeks. And the time difference, just so you know, is we're between 12 and 13 hours the next day. And so the first few days were like, gosh, I feel great. We were just so tired. We didn't sleep. So I literally woke up 3 to 4 minutes ago and I'm like, oh, normally this is like an early riser and all this. I never set an alarm. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I gotta be on right now.
Oh, well, welcome.
I'm going to have a sip of coffee. So you are retired as well, and you're doing this.
Well, I'm sort of retired, but not really. So
Okay.
I went back to work for a small consulting firm, and they found out that we had a podcast, and they really loved the podcast. And so, like in August, they're like, "Why are you working full time?" I'm like, "Because Mama needs insurance." And so they offered me 30 hours a week with full benefits. And so I get to do that job, it's totally the dream job. And then I get to do this. And I love doing this.
Yeah. No, I can tell you do. So how did you all decide to do this?
She took me up on a joke. I was like, we should record a podcast. This would be funny for other people to hear. And she was like, let's do it. And then the next thing I knew.
Yeah, you don't mess around. You don't joke with Christian.
I know. And I had mentioned my husband records music and stuff. So he had all the equipment.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I knew, here we were.
You both seem super, super natural though about it. It seems really great. It's great. I don't mean
I'm just living in
supernatural
denial.
and the supernatural. Whoa. It's really cool. I'm
Thank you.
I'm very happy for you because it does seem like it's a lot of fun.
It is. And, we get as much out of it as our guests and our listeners do. And
you have to.
Yeah.
So if you see Skittles taking notes, it's because it's probably a book or something we're going to buy.
Yeah. That's perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Because we leave the 10th to go back to France for a longer period of time. So this will get into the whole olive growing, the fact I'm an oleoculteur, which means I am an olive producer. Officially, I have a card.
You are living when I try to fall asleep at night, I will think of really beautiful things. And I'm like, oh, I have an olive farm. You're living my dreams.
And the best thing is it's not actually an olive farm. It's enough of an olive grove that we made 8 liters of olive oil last year, which is so our goal is olive oil subsistence and maybe being able to share it with family, which we did last year. But if you have an olive farm, then it becomes work again.
Yeah.
You got to watch that. You got to watch
okay,
the fine line.
I'm going to tweak my dream and
It's not a whole farm because then you're like, it's time to pick olives. And we can talk about that, but it is pretty funny at one point here. But it is pretty funny. You have to have just the right amount.
Right.
So that, because it does become an obsession I guess with just about anything or a passion. Some people call it obsession. I call it passion. It's the positive spin on passion, on obsession. But you wake up, there's a period of time when the olives start to ripen. I sound like one of either Ernest or Giulio Gallo. We will pick no olives until it's time. But there's a point at which they do start to mature. And that's you don't want them to go too far. You don't want a windstorm to come and shake too many olives off the tree, because once they're off the tree, you have to take them to the press within basically 3 to 4 days. And so there's you start picking, Chris at some point, he would be like, don't look at the trees today, Cecile, because we've got something to do. And so, I'll go and have my coffee and I start walking around the trees. We have 150-year-old trees. Oh, maybe 2 of them are just these beautiful, massive trees. And so I'm like, you walk around and you're like, oh, there's enough olives to start picking. And you start taking some, or some have fallen on the ground. So you start gathering. And pretty soon it's 4 hours later and you've done this meditative walk around your tree. You've picked enough olives to take over. That's enough for a liter of olive oil to the community press.
Wow.
This is very, very different. I mean, Gretchen, you got to be laughing because, you know what my job was like.
It was hell.
It was nonstop. It was all right, what city are you going to be talking in this week? and here I am walking around my trees in my PJs, having some coffee. And like, I think we have enough now. We'll pick some tomorrow.
That sounds...
Take them to the press and we'll come back with olive. I will send you to some photos just afterwards to give you a sense of like the shit-eating grin on my face. The first time we picked up 4 liters of olive oil is like, I loved what I did at work. Don't get me wrong. I loved the people I worked with. But the sense of satisfaction I get from like 4 liters of olive oil is 100 times more than that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just this different. I still actually get people like, don't you miss it? Don't you want to get in? Don't you want to like keep in touch with everything? I'm like, with HR stuff. Yes, I was passionate about everything. I never lied. I cared about what I did, but I'm like, when is enough? Like,
yeah,
I actually applied for a job. I started going through a process and I stopped short of talking to their HR. But they're like, the HR person, you've got to talk to the HR person. I was like, what am I doing? And at one point, I was like, sweetheart, you've done enough. And people are like, you're too young to have retired. I'm like, too old to be working. Like, what? Why?
Right.
And there is this sort of sixth sense that we have to keep going, which is why I asked you, Gretchen, you love what you're doing. You have a particular, I'm like, and the other thing is when we live in France, like this is not going to be a ding on American lack of healthcare and everything, but like we just talked to like a tax person in France and they're like, oh no, you're always going to pay taxes in the US because you have American citizenship, but I also have French citizenship. And so for healthcare next year, so, I'm still on the reduced healthcare plan from our very good retirement package and, the early retirement package where I get healthcare for 2 years at a reduced rate. But they're like, which again, it's great, but it's still $1,200 a month. And next December, it'll become 2024 or 2040. Right. And in France, our healthcare is going to be $25 per person.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And France rates higher than the US in healthcare. Now, that's not to say it's always easy, but I mean, like,
yeah.
So I do have that extra ability to not have to need healthcare, which makes a huge difference. But even if I just became a resident of France, you don't have to be a citizen. If you're a resident of France, you can get that healthcare.
Wow.
So anyhow, it was one of those things where I'm like, maybe somebody should hear about this sort of grind. It's like, because I do think that in some cases, we believe it's never enough. So if you're doing something that you love, absolutely. But
yeah.
And I work, Chris is like, so we were supposed to go hang out at a market or do something. And 4.5 hours later, I'm like, no, got to pick the olives. It's a little different, right? And it's seasonal and, it's because I want to do that. And I think that we are so conditioned to think that if we're not doing what we did before, then we've fallen off the face of the earth. I can't tell you how many people are even like, but your brain is going to go soft. And I'm like, yeah, I read the stories and everything, but I don't know. I read 9 books. Who knew that I loved science fiction space operas?
I love it.
I never was into that genre. And all of a sudden, like,
I didn't know that existed.
Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of why I was like, maybe it would be worth talking about this, because I think that it applies even to people when we work.
Three, two, one. Welcome back to another episode of Shit That Goes on Our Heads. Today we have an amazing guest. Cecile, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I'm super, super happy to be here.
I love this. I already have, listening to you talk already, I hearing what you've said, it doesn't even matter, right? Because like you seem so happy.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question is, and I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but you said you were passionate about your career. You were really happy to be doing what you were doing. You were in it. You're traveling. Like what I remember of knowing you was seeing you up on a stage talking, very well spoken. Like I was like, wow, like, because there's good speakers and bad speakers. I was like a fan, but I would see you everywhere, right? Either if it was on the company page or if I was there in person watching you talk, and having that corporate kind of happiness to the happiness you have now. How did you adjust? Like, did it ever become like, oh shit, like I'm actually really happy and not having this job that I was passionate about?
And I absolutely was passionate about what I did. I felt like I had the best job in the world. I was fulfilled. I had wonderful people that I worked with and all of that. But interestingly enough, I did know that at some point I was going to, I was running on empty anyhow. And when COVID hit, I know everyone has sort of their COVID moment, but when COVID hit, I realized that I had not spent more than, I don't know, I was like, I don't think I have spent a whole month sleeping in the same bed with my spouse in 15 years. Like on a for a whole month that I hadn't traveled. And I realized that was a little nuts. And because I actually really liked him, I actually, I didn't just love him, I actually liked hanging out. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. So it's interesting because that was a turning point in some ways for me in realizing something probably has to change. And then, post-COVID, our company changed in a lot of ways and became, another company. I was still out there speaking. All of those things were positive, but I kept in the back of my head that there is something kind of unsustainable about that. And so there is a way of being fulfilled and happy in the work that you do. But in your work life, there's always, whether you have a dream job, whether you feel perfectly content with what you're doing, whether you trust everyone around you or not, there are outside forces that can come and turn things upside down. And when you don't have that level, and I'm by no means a control freak, but when you don't have a level of being able to say, well, those outside forces aren't going to mess with with my happiness, not with what I'm doing necessarily, but with the happiness part of it.
Yeah.
Then I think it's a different level of happiness. I just saw a couple of friends of mine who are both working, who I had worked with before. One is still working in the same place, another is not. And they're just like, you look younger. And I'm like, younger? It's like 2 years since. It's like, no, you actually look younger. And I'm like, let's see how that's possible. And it's like, it's got to be that you're just so happy. And I think, I'd say that the transition was probably 6 months of kind of, maybe even a little less. I think I got lucky because I had somebody that I was living with, this spouse of mine, who had decided to retire 6 months before and helped my father transition, which was probably one of the most earth-shattering experiences of my life, which was losing my mom really suddenly when I was still working. And that was another sort of precipitating factor. So he helped my dad kind of get back on his feet, move to where he wanted to be and everything after losing somebody he had been with for 62 years. So it was, so there's a lot of joy and also a lot of like devastation. But when my mom died, and again, it was sudden because we didn't know that she had lung cancer and had 5 weeks to live when she was hospitalized.
Wow.
It was during Omicron. I couldn't go and see her in the hospital. She's hard of hearing. I was trying to advocate for her, talking to nurses, calling them in tears every night. Say, what is going on with my mom? What can, all of this sort of thing. So I had this event and I decided that when I retired, that would be the time because it was 6 months after my mom dying or actually even 9 months after that, I actually retired. I decided that would be when I would truly start to heal. Because no matter what we say, we don't do grieving right in our modern society and definitely not in the Western world. We don't do grieving right. So 9 months where, and I did have a moment, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to name names, but I had a moment where it's like, I had someone who I worked for say, take all the time you want, but are you going to meet with X next Friday? And I was like, that's not all the time I want. My mom and I were super close. She was my hero. She and I were very much alike. And I was completely knocked off kilter. So the last 9 months of my job, I was like, nobody knows what's going on inside of me. And nobody could. And people were amazingly wonderful and supportive. But I checked out, which I think many of us do, but we have to keep going anyhow. So, and I also, my brother is a childhood diabetic who I also adore. He's my older brother. I remember sledding down a hill when I was 8 years old to impress him, crashing into a tree, and he felt really bad, and all this other stuff. I would do anything. If my brother Chris said, Cecile, do this, I would do it no matter what. Like I was his agent. I would knock on doors. I'm like, do you need your lawn shoveled? And I was the person who'd do the talking. He'd do the grunt work. He'd give me 25 cents and then teach me how to play pinball later on. I mean, we were super tight. And he had been on and off. He had gotten progressive. It's harder to be. He was a diabetic from the time that he was 7 and he was going to be 60. He actually turned 60 last year. And so I was like, well, if I didn't, and if I didn't spend enough time with my mom at the end, and honestly, I did spend a lot of time with her. We moved into the same building to make sure, I have a really kind of, so we were close by, but all of this was like, I'm going to heal. And then I'm going to spend more time with my family, with people that I love that I haven't been able to because my job has been so crazy. I spent so much. I'm actually going to spend time with my husband. I'm going to do these things. And that was kind of my plan. And I did. And then December of this year or of last year, we lost my brother suddenly again. So I was like, thank God I had that time.
Yeah.
That's like my only consolation because it's been 4 months and I miss him every day and I miss my mom. It's like the 1-2 punch. So in a way, I had an odd transition because I had tremendous loss. I was so grateful I got to spend time with my brother. And I had, my partner who was like, when is enough? Sweetie, you had a lot of people who thought you were going to burn out because you worked so hard, because you're so, here's another big reveal. I have ADHD, undiagnosed, full on ADHD, which I channeled into being a workaholic who never did enough. So who could never do enough. So like, through all of that, I feel like my transition, because it's a totally fair question. I think we're getting back to your actual question.
No, I love
Skittles. I gotta
perfect.
But in a way, that to me, my transition was maybe easier because it's not like I went from being full on at work. My mind had been in a different place for about 9 months anyway. And I was looking for the space to actually be able to. And I didn't even know what grieving is. Everyone's like, well, you need time to grieve. I'm like, I don't know what it is. All I know is that it keeps welling up and you don't really know how. And we're certainly not taught how to do that. And so for me, that transition had mentally, I was in a different place anyway. And then when I left work, people were like, what's next? I'm like, what's next is I'm going to think for a while and maybe grow some olives. And I sort of said that tongue in cheek, and it turned out that's exactly what I was going to say. I'm going to start reading like my mom did, because my mom would read like a book a day or whatever.
Wow.
Like, I'm going to do something totally different. But for some reason, that's not considered enough in a way.
Yeah. In this society, it's not when I semi-retired, they're like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. But, for me, I was fortunate enough that I'm a unicorn in my field. And I was able to land a dream job and do my podcast. And we did do some fun things. Like we spent 3 weeks in Europe. We've done some traveling, but I also healed a lot. Like similar to you, like when the depression started to kick in, I was pretty much checking out. When I got that email that said, "Hey, you qualified for a VP," I was like, "Deuces, bitch, I'm out."
So I know people like, well, you're not, I even was, somebody was like, "You're not actually going to do that though. I mean, you're young." I'm like, if I qualify, I've done some years. And by the way, I've been working since, like I told you, I was peddling my brother's services when I was 8 years old.
Right.
I've never not worked. Ever.
Yeah.
And I think there's this idea that there isn't. You're never enough, and you're not going to be enough if you're not doing what it was that you were doing. And that, I think there are actually a couple of things. And I know here's the speech giver in me. There are 3 points I'd like to make here, but I mean, I want you to leave this with 3 important points, honestly.
Do you have a PowerPoint?
No PowerPoint, I promise. Could you put a deck together? I'm like, hell no, I'm not going to put a deck together. I've done that way too long. Not a chance. But there is this idea of like being productive. And so if you can't redefine what productivity is, and everyone's like, oh, you're just going to scale it back and you'll do less. I'm like, no, it's different. It has to be different because otherwise you're just doing, kind of the same thing. And things like depression do come back. They crawl back in because you're not actually radically changing your patterns enough,
Right.
We are conditioned individuals. But I think there is this idea that, if we're not productive, then we're useless and we're not serving society. And, we kind of have to rethink, like, who am I being productive for? To what end am I being productive? And then redefining what productivity is. To me, being productive, it was so funny. I told my kids, I was like, I just read like 9 books, maybe 12 books. And they're like, seriously? Mom, how long has it been since you actually had to sit down? Because I'm an obsessive reader. If I start a book, I have to finish it. So like reading is a full-time engagement for me. I can't half-ass a book because I can't sleep. I'm obsessed and I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm dreaming about the people for, like all the characters. I'm like, I can't not do this. And so they were like, that is the coolest thing ever, Mom, that you just like 9 books. Like, I know I feel kind of lazy. And they're like, why? Your brain was engaged. You were doing something. It was just not working the way that you did, And the other thing is, we all know work doesn't end when you leave work. If you're somebody who even cares a little bit about others, which we all are, or we wouldn't be here.
Right.
There's the after calls and then the after calls. And then at 9:00, somebody who's in tears or somebody who's like, you got to talk them off the ledge and everything. And so it's so strange. And yet I can guarantee to you or anybody listening, I have not one moment been bored. I don't believe in being bored because what you can do is you can actually think those things through. You can go down rabbit holes and not cut yourself off because you can, you can be like, oh, I'm going to follow this. Okay. What is Taylor Swift actually? And how did she get started? What is all of this, and go all the way down, until it's like 2 or 3 hours later. My mind is engaged. There's nothing wrong with that. It's what we all want to do. Right. We are like, oh yeah, I got to get back to work, and I'm just, no, it's not olive time. It's raining. I can't do that. So it's like there's these different things kind of built into it. So I do think productivity is skewed. Of course you want to be productive when you're working. But to me, I've redefined productivity to be okay with myself because I find that I still have to tell people that I'm okay. Yeah. People are like, hey, you look younger. You look happy. And I'm like, I am really, but I'm still doing something. I eat olives now and I do, and I read books and actually do any of you like the New York Times puzzles?
Like, I do.
Oh my gosh.
I have to use ChatGPT to solve them. So, yeah.
I'm a spelling bee aficionado. And so after the Barbie movie came out, like Chris and I are like, hey, what's our job is puzzle. Like my job, like if I've done all of all the puzzles, like Wordle, Queen Bee, connections in a day, like we will stay up till 2 a.m. if we haven't done that yet, because our job is puzzle. So we tell people like my job isn't beach like Ken, my job is puzzle. That's what I do. And when I'm in France, my job is olive.
But I love this because, you're retiring was your form of self-love and self-care, right? Mm-hmm. You found you're happy. And even though you had all that grief, you found a way to channel that and to really deal with it, because I think that a lot of us don't deal with it correctly, right? We don't take the time to absorb all the feelings.
Yeah. We don't take time to actually to grieve at all.
Right.
Because there's an incredible book that my sister-in-law, who didn't know, she was grieving for my mom and then lost her mom. And then my brother died within a month of the year anniversary of her mom dying, and it's just this, she sent me an article, and one of the things that was so incredibly helpful was it's that there's grieving and there's grief. And grieving is the process whereby you rewire your brain. And because you have to learn to live without someone who's been in your life and who your whole world view and world order makes sense with them in it. And when they're gone, and our brains are incredible, but it takes a long time to rewire them. Because I just came back from this incredible 6-week, a trip of a lifetime, and where we traveled literally with a backpack that you could carry on your back or roll, one backpack for 6 weeks.
I need your packing tips because
it's intense. I will say it involved buying a suitcase within the last week just to throw all the things. I'm like, all right, I've been really good, but so grief is that episodic moment where it's those episodes where you're completely knocked over, like a wave has just come and upended you, and you're sobbing for no reason. My mom has the smell from childhood, and I kept one of her nightgowns, and I opened the drawer, and I know it's going to sound weird, but I smelled my mom's nightgown, and I just started sobbing. That's grief. But grieving is being like, that's okay. I'm going to put it back. I'm not throwing it away because I'm going to not deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to take it out again for a little while. And I'm going to, think about the moment with her in this nightgown when we picked it out and bought it together and all these other sorts of things. And that's a process of my brain learning that. But coming back from this trip, and even on the trip, I know I would have called her a bunch of times to tell her. And my brother is an incredible chef. And I was like, I wanted to, I got you the best pepper in the world, Chris, from Cambodia. And because no one would have appreciated it more than him. Right. And so that's that doesn't stop. And those feelings of grief don't ever stop. But you learn to be like, I can imagine what you would have made with this. And you try to find the happiness. But if you don't have time to go from those moments of just overwhelming sadness to, this is the joy that you brought me and what you taught me, so that I can, so that I'm going on this crazy wild goose chase for the best pepper in the world. It's because I know you would have appreciated it. If you can't get there, then you never get to a place of grieving where your mind and your brain is rewired. And we have to. You just have to. So time is such a gift. So reading 9 books, even if it was escapism, is a gift. And we don't see it as that. We see it as being idle. How many people go on vacation and they either stay completely wired when they're on vacation? They're like, oh, I feel like I need a vacation after my vacation because it took so long, it took me so long to unwind, it's not right. And so I think that's part of it for sure. So productivity, fuck it. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I am productive. I'm productively learning how to live my life without two of the most important people in my life, my whole life, and like I found something that I think makes me very productive. I made olive oil. My brother did get to try my olive oil. He was really fired up. He's like, don't I get more than everybody else? I'm like, you have 5 milliliters more than, or centiliters more than everybody else, man. Like, you're getting 25 centiliters. Everybody else is only getting 20. And he was like, okay, but I'm going to need some more, But he did get to try my oil, but he was supposed to come visit this September and actually see our house. He had seen it, but not when we were living there, because we were just buying it right after we were going to take a trip to France. That's another reason for our France and olives are so important, is because if my parents it was going to be their 60th wedding anniversary, and Chris and I had rented a big house. So I have a brother, Chris, and my partner's also Chris. So sorry if that's confusing, but I don't live with my brother and I don't plan everything. But we had done this. And then my mom died right before. She already had a ticket actually to come to France. All the grandchildren, everybody was going to be there. And she died. We all went anyway. And so it was sort of like a way of grieving her. And that was when we found the house and bought the house that we were going to live in, which is much smaller than this one that held our whole family, but down the hill from there. And then we got it. So he got to see it, but he didn't. And my mom knew, she saw it in photos, but she never actually got to see where we were going to be. But she knew that we were going to go there. So that's sort of a comfort. And my mom's ashes are buried under a tree, that one of the 200-year-old olive trees there.
Wow.
And we call it Grandmother Olive. And our first batch of olive oil is called Cuvée Mimi for my mom. And so in a way, she lives on. And I talk to the tree. When I leave, I go and I say, when we prune the tree, I'm like, sorry, Mom, we got to kind of cut nails in your fingers. I hope we didn't go too far. I talk to her, which I think is pretty normal, by the way.
Yeah.
So I think that, I found a way to redefine it, but I actually, going through another interview process and stuff, and you're like, I should do this. I should do this, because that's what makes me worthy. That in the world, in other people's eyes, I need to be working and making money and doing all of this other stuff. And one of the things that luckily my partner, Chris, and he's like, he started becoming a budgeting. He's just like, let me show you. And this is how much money we're actually spending. And see, it's going to be enough. But it took months for him to convince me it was going to be enough, that we would be okay. Because our life in France is much less expensive. Food is less expensive. New York is super expensive. Right. We'll be selling one of the apartments and our daughter will be up here and we'll still have a place to be, but it's not going to be the same. We're going to be transitioning fully over there. It's just, but it takes a while, And then, I was like, what is my purpose? And it's just because my purpose was to inspire other people and everything, I'm just going to inspire myself or just meet people and do things differently.
Yeah. This is so interesting to me, because even though you've talked about, different aspects of your life that you were basically, it's all kind of the same. You were having to rewire, what you defined your self-worth to be, what your life meant without a job, without family, without, these actual losses.
Yeah.
And looking at you, you're happy. I think the happiness radiates from inside out. So it's just so beautiful and so interesting. So, thank you for sharing the story. I'm taking notes. I got to ask myself this, because kind of, I remember, G-Rex, when you had that email and you called me, and I think you knew, right? You knew in your mind that it was the right move, but you were almost saying it like you were asking for permission. I'm going to do this, but you were waiting to hear oh, you shouldn't do that or whatever, And so I think to Cecile's point, how we define our worth and what we think is okay to do is a little bit skewed. And I don't know, the both of you, you guys are very inspiring, and I'm taking notes completely selfishly to ask myself in the shower later, how do I define my worth? What is my success?
There was a lot that went into that too, right? Because when I got that email at the time, my wife was suffering through shingles, right? So, and I was I was turning 60 the following summer. I was like, fuck, who's going to hire me? Because I still need insurance, right? I could retire, but how am I going to fucking survive? So, part of all of that played into the breakdown that I had in December. There was a lot of other shit that went on. But I will tell you that once I made that decision, right? Once it was all final and I had gotten the paperwork, by that time I was like, fuck it. I don't fucking care anymore. Because everything had gotten so stressful, right? Like personally stressful. Like we didn't decorate for Christmas. We didn't do anything. I was so depressed and nobody could figure out what was going on because on the outside, I look perfectly fine.
We all do. We're so good at that.
I was so good at that. Christmas Day rolled around and I was like, fuck, I am done. But I'm going to say, we were on a webinar yesterday and I can't stress this enough. Like if you are in a spot where you just don't feel like you can talk to anybody, pick up the phone and call 988 because they honestly saved my life. And I am so thankful to be alive today because like you, Cecile, I am in such a better place. On this side of depression, I'm living my fucking best life. I get to be on a podcast with my best friend.
Yeah.
We get to go out there and make a difference every day. I'm living my dream job, working my dream job. And I'm still spending amazing time with my wife, right? Like we drove 2 hours to go see Wanda Sykes last night and then got up.
Which is so awesome.
And drove her ass home.
Yeah.
But, true. I can see it in your face. I see a different Cecile. I see a different one than the working
Even though
Cecile.
I just woke up and I look like crap.
Yes. Dude, like you don't need all the lights shining on you on the stage. You are.
I got nothing on my face.
Yeah, I feel like your presence here today is stronger than it was ever on a stage.
That's such a wonderful. You're not necessarily aware of that, But I think the only other thing, though, that I think is important is we think our relevance in this world is tied to our productivity again. But your relevance and like, are you going to stay relevant? Are you going to stay current? It's like current on what? Like I know more about olives and the diseases that come and hurt. Like it's a different thing, right?
Right.
Like I can't tell you again how many times people are like, well, don't you want to stay on top of all of it? I'm like, no, I don't have to. No, I still love people, by the way. I reached out to Gretchen. I was like, this may be off topic, but I thought, well, here I am. I would have been like 2 years ago. You know what? I can't, I have no time to talk to anybody. Let them come and talk to me and ask me if I need, if I can do something. And I was like, you know what? I think it might be worth talking about this. It's because our purpose, our relevance, our productivity in life, all of those things. See, I got my 3 points in, by the way. Those are my 3 things. But those things are so, you can teach an old dog new tricks, right? Or whatever, I don't know. But those things strike me all the time because people are like, don't you want to stay relevant? I'm like, I don't know. Again, for who? I'm relevant to my kids. They're happy that I'm happier. They're like, the first time my daughter came to visit us in France, he was like, you guys are just like so in your happy place here. You kind of drift around. You're like, okay, today's a big day. It's time to go to the market because this is when we're going to get all our vegetables. And, and this is the good day to go get bread and stuff. It's just, and it is enough. It is enough. And it took me a while to realize that, but I still hear so many people who are like, oh, I don't know. I feel like I'm not really being productive. And then redefine productivity.
Yep.
Redefine it instead of trying to fit yourself into another mold because it's never going to be enough then. It's never going to be enough because what we do in our day-to-day work lives is a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
And so if you try to make another chapter in your life, if that's your bar, you're never going to hit it. So you can either be disappointed in yourself. And honestly, Gretchen, that probably has something to do also with some of the depression. I know I was grieving and that kind of couched some of it, but I'm sure I was also sort of depressed. Like, I don't know what's going on at all. And all of these other things that were intermingled that if you can't change the bar, like change where it is, and it's not, it might be higher. Because like I'm learning about things I didn't know anything about. I knew what I was doing in my previous job. I was good at it. And I was running at this sort of high revving my engine constantly level. And all of a sudden I'm like, it's different now. But if you can't redefine what productivity is for you, if you can't find relevance, then it is going to be harder. And so you just have to think about where you want to redefine and what those things are. And I think one of the most important questions is like,
right,
am I doing this? And it's actually okay for it to be a smaller group of people. Like it's okay for it to be for me. Because when I read a book, again, I'm gone to the world. And it's so funny because my husband will walk, he like walks around, he like will put a cup of tea next to me because he's so happy to see me just doing something for myself because I don't normally do that. And I'm learning to be excited and proud, like, hey, I just read 9 books. And I'm like, what's the next one you think I should read? And he's like, I can't believe you're into sci-fi, like opera. Like these like 3 to 6 book series, like about, and they're always women heroines, by the way. That has not changed. I'm still a pain in the ass of the patriarchy. I'm like calling it out wherever I can be anywhere. I'm like, yeah, it's because men are doing this. I'm sorry. Yeah. Honestly. Luckily, there are a few good men in the world, honestly, because and my son is one of them. My husband is one. I got a few friends. No, but honestly, I got a few brothers and my brother-in-law. But honestly, that has not changed. That's a core part of who I am. That'll never change. It's just redirected.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Oh my God.
So, I hope I haven't gone on and on too much.
No.
When you ask somebody who spoke for a living to join, it's going to be like blah, 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 blah.
But you know what
this is wonderful.
You know what's funny though is like as soon as I turned 60, literally between 59 and 60, a switch went off on me. And I was like, you know what? I don't really give a fuck about a whole lot of things anymore, right? I care about my happiness.
Yep.
I care about my wife's happiness. But I'm here to make myself happy. And, my wife's
and Dirty
funny.
Skittles happiness.
And Dirty
clearly.
Skittles happy. So my wife's super funny.
She's nailing it.
She was like, I've never seen you work on something so hard and not get paid for it. But I believe in our mission for the podcast, right? And our mission is to really normalize how we talk about mental health.
Me too, which is why I was like, can I be part of this too? Because I think what you're doing is truly remarkable. And I think it's funny as hell for one. It's poignant as hell for another. It's really important. It's important, I think. And I think I'm very impressed that you're doing it. And I'm honored to be part of it. And I can't wait to hear more. Everybody.
Thank you.
So I am going to turn the tables on Dirty Skittles and Cecile now.
Why?
So because you normally ask these questions, but
for it,
I am going to change. I'm changing it up. So my first question is, what is one word that you love the most?
That's a tough one.
Well, I know the word you hate the most.
Spot like this.
Yeah.
Well, it's Dirty Skittles going to answer first, right?
Well, she got to think about it.
It's the word I love the most. Mommy.
Oh, okay.
That's a good one.
I like that one.
That's a good one. I hear ma more than mommy these days, but that's also pretty good.
Yeah.
You want me to answer too?
Yeah, no, you get to answer. It's a 2-part question.
Joy.
I like that.
Joy.
I love that.
I love that. Okay, so now I have another one. I already know the answer for this one for Dirty Skittles, but what's the word you hate the most? I'm dying. I'm going to die of laughter.
Can I tell mine? I'll say mine. Well, the word I hate the most is moist.
Well, moist, I was going to say, everybody hates moist. It's gross.
Moist or wasp.
Oh.
I don't like wasps. I don't like the way that comes out.
Wasp. It's a little hard to say.
Yeah.
I get that. I actually get that. Mine is going to take me right into the world of business speak. And I think it's empowerment. I think it's abuse.
Oh.
I love that.
There's nothing wrong with the word itself. I just think it's abused. It's like, we're empowering our people. I'm like, no, really?
Yeah.
And women's empowerment. I'm like, even the word power is means a little something different to women than it does to men.
Exactly. Exactly.
Either that, it's probably empowerment. There's a lot of business speak. I think heart share, mind share, those always make me gag too. And also talking around the piece. I know that's more than one word, but like around the piece, like what piece? And why not just talk directly about it?
Yes.
Whatever the piece is. But I think that's a whole other podcast, is things that make you go, whoa.
Yeah. I hear you.
Oh, I love this. Cecile, thank you. This was so awesome. It's so great to catch up with you. And now you're part of the family.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We have 60 of you now, 60 family members we never had before.
That is amazing. 60. And, so Chris is going to be 60 in a few months. I'm just 2 years behind him. So I'm getting there really quickly. Although I do like to talk about the fact that we're from two different generations. I'm Gen X and he's a boomer, a Jones boomer, apparently, but that's a pretty auspicious number.
It is.
60 is when you had your turning point. You were talking about your turning point. My turning point for sure was my mom's passing. And I was like, nothing matters as much as
that.
Yeah. Happiness.
Yeah.
You know what? And I'm telling you, you look amazing. Like you,
for somebody who just woke up.
Yeah, but you glow like happiness, right? You can tell that you're out there and you're living your best life now, right? And
on vacation, having friends be part of that and stuff. I had with so much fun. Like I have this joke term, it's called chilling hard, because I have a hard time relaxing. So chilling hard means, I'm working really hard at it, but I'm doing, the kind of relaxing that works for me.
Yeah. I love that.
Love.
But I'm happy to see both of you. And again, I want to thank you for what you're doing for everybody out there, because it's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Really impressive. It's inspiring and it's awesome. So you're living your best lives.
Well, one of us is.
Gretchen. All these words. And we didn't get to hear what your favorite and most hated words were.
My favorite word is love.
Oh,
love that.
And the word I hate the most, I'm going to just spell it. Starts with a C and ends with a T. It's my least favorite word.
That's a bad word. That is an unpleasant word. That one doesn't trip off the tongue very nicely, and it's just an awful word. I agree with you.
Yes.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And so, and joy, I never actually say what joy to me, it's because you can find joy. If you can find joy in anything, in sadness, in tragedy, in beauty, in love, and everything else, it's like you don't have to, if you can see those things, then you don't have to seek happiness. You find peace. That is like a totally different state of being.
Yeah.
I love that. Love.
Wow. I gotta write that down. Damn.
We're giving Skittles like all these little nuggets of information because I'm telling you, don't wait until you're 60 to find this though.
No, don't wait till you're 60, 57, 56, whatever. Just do it. And I can't wait for the shower of yours. It's going to be a revelatory shower.
Oh my God, I know.
It's going to be important.
I'm telling you. It's going to be a life-changing moment for sure.
This is going to be
thank you so much again. This has been awesome. Sorry, G-Rex, to cut you off.
Well, I love you both. Thank you so much. This has been
love you too.
A really wonderful way to wake up.
Yes. Awesome. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm G-Rex.
And I'm Dirty Skittles.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'd love to listen to your feedback.
We can't do this without you guys.
It's okay to be not okay. Just make sure you're talking to someone.